Hello and welcome to the Ringer NBA show. It's Group Chat. I'm here with Justin Verrier.
Hi there.
Haley O'Shaughnessy.
Is Louisville winning right now?
We still have an Academy Awards hangover. We're just so obsessed with Get Out and Shape of Water.
Yeah, I've just been banging out those rom-coms and those middle-tier dramas.
That's right. Middle-tier dramas for you, Haley?
Are we still talking about the Cavs?
You know, we're talking about Louisville now. Middle-tier drama. No, guys, come on. It's NBA season. Tanking season. It's getting ready for the playoffs time, this is always a little bit of a quiet period for the NBA. You know, we were kind of like not quite in the pennant race, although seeding is really interesting right now because you got so many teams that are bunched up between like 3 and 9, 3 and 8. We're going to talk about a couple of those teams that are in that middle tier that we're obsessed with right now. They're not necessarily good, but we're obsessed with them. And we're also going to have Jason Concepcion, who's going to come talk to us about his really awesome James Harden versus Russell Westbrook, the argument is over piece that ran on Wednesday, I believe. But first, let's get to a little bit of the more recent happenings in the NBA. And the Cavs are back. Haley, did you know that?
Back?
The Cavs are...
Back to which Cavs?
Well, this is my thing. An all-new Cavs. A bouncy, happy, athletic Cavs. I still think they shoot too many threes. I'm starting to develop a theory in my mind that people are shooting too many threes. What do you guys think about that?
I think that last week you just said how much you hated watching the Rockets.
I think you just hate math is what it comes down to.
Maybe I think I've seen too many times recently people on fast breaks, teams on fast breaks passing up, making an extra pass for a layup to get like an above the break three. You know?
There are a lot of teams that are prioritizing just easier shots and for the added value of a three-pointer these days. I think the math works out, though, that's a better shot.
I guess.
So we're talking about this.
Am I relitigating this?
Well, in successive weeks, you've talked about putting guys on the floor in hard fouls, and now you're talking about not taking threes. So.
I have. Am I getting old in front of you guys' eyes?
Kind of.
Oh, my God. No, I want to talk a little about the Cavs who were they looked really bouncy last night. They beat the Nuggets 113-108. LeBron, incredible LeBron game. He's out of the MVP discussion, right? We're not. It's just too much Harden.
They're probably just not going to win enough. And unlike Anthony Davis, even though the Pelicans have about the same amount of wins, he obviously has the late momentum going for him.
He had 39, 10, and 8 last night, scored the last 9 points. Larry Nance Jr. is kind of negating the need for Tristan Thompson to be there. And I was reading on Reddit today, there was some interesting stuff about how basically after all of this, after Kyrie leaving, after IT for only a little while, after only a little of Kevin Love this season, that the Cavs' numbers have kind of leveled out to where they should be and where they were last year. And that, the big thing is that
this time last year?
It was basically since the trade, the 10 games or whatever that they've had, all these guys, that the metrics pretty much are around where they should be, more or less, for Cavs basketball. LeBron last night told Cassie Hubbard that he thinks he's playing like he's at an all-time high in terms of how he's feeling.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Great reference for his own play.
Well, I mean, she did ask him. I mean, it's not like he was just like, I want to weigh in on the Black Panther soundtrack, but first let me talk about where I feel like I am in terms of how I'm playing.
That's his entire Instagram, though, so we know that.
You guys both watched this game last night. What did you see from the Cavs that you liked, and is there anything you saw that you didn't like?
It's funny that you already said bouncy twice because that was the first word that came to my mind when I knew that we were going to be talking about Nance. He's so much more energetic by himself than like anything we saw in the Cavs all season.
Yeah.
It is so much fun to see LeBron with young guys. I don't know why it wasn't a bigger push for that before.
I think because LeBron does not like playing with young guys generally.
Yeah, but I would argue, well, generally maybe, but this team he definitely does. He's so happy every time like he dishes it inside and like Nance puts it up for a huge dunk. He's so happy every time Jordan Clarkson does anything. Like he's his biggest fan. Like they're all LeBron darlings now. And he's like, I just feel like he's really playing like he's happy again, which, is good if you're LeBron James. And
it's weird. He's gone from peers to proteges. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gone from like all my friends to all these guys who probably grew up watching me.
Yeah. And we know that he loves that. I don't think it was
sure.
calling Kyrie like my son. You know what I mean? Whereas these guys are like, yeah, I'm literally probably old enough.
And Kyrie's like, parenthood is just a construct, man.
Peers to proteges. That was beautiful.
Thanks. Right at the top.
Melanda Minsk over here. Yeah, I think we talked about it right when the trade went down. Like, Nance just makes so much sense as a 5 next to LeBron in today's day and age, just because he's so athletic. He's a rim runner, and you could see that they're able to do more defensively when he's out there. So they have been bouncy, if that's the word of the day.
Sure.
I'm still a little concerned. I think we're going through almost like condensed cycles of panic.
It's 2-2-2-2.
Yeah. And I was looking up just like who they've beat since the All-Star break. They've only won 4 games. The first 3 teams that they beat are combined 2-20 after the break, and Denver's 4-4. So I'm still waiting for them to beat a team of worth.
Yeah.
To really make me see like that they can compete on a level of the Toronto Raptors, let's say.
Yeah.
But, you know, there are signs. There are signs that they can't put it together because of some of the guys that they got.
I think all my excitement that I was just talking about, and maybe, Chris, for you too, is not that I'm like, oh, now they can get back to where they should be, like 1 seed. They'll make it to the finals for sure. I think my excitement is just relative because I kind of saw, like, all year Tristan Thompson wasn't really the rim protector he was in a couple seasons before. And, you know, it was, like, confusing that Kevin Love was making more sense because – not that it's confusing because he can't stretch a 4, and that's great, but like he can't play defense. So where are we going with this when it comes time for the playoffs? And someone has to play defense in the front court.
It was a catastrophically.
It was so bad. And then when IT came back and we were like, this is the height. This is what we've been waiting for at the point guard position. Among all these old guys who like play like 12 minutes each.
Yeah.
So I think relatively I'm like, great.
Right.
Now you guys might be able to do something.
They're watchable.
Yeah.
Again, which is a huge step.
I think before when they would lose, it was because they were getting their doors absolutely blown off by the opposing offense. And now it seems to be more like if the shots are falling, if they're hitting their threes, they're probably going to win. And if they're not, it's up to LeBron to completely create a win. I think the biggest surprise is just that Larry Nance seems to be the best move Kobe Altman's made in his entire stint, which is only a year now, but it has seen a lot of like high usage from Kobe Altman.
I wonder how the Brooklyn pick will play out.
That's interesting. I also think the biggest question going forward is like, where does Love fit in? Not only if they get the Brooklyn pick and LeBron comes back, but like, what about late in the season? In the playoffs?
It's strange how the Cavs have sort of, with all the awards talk, and we were talking a little bit about MVP. If the Cavs make it to the finals again, I don't know when the Coach of the Year is voted on, and it's not like I'm like enamored with Ty Lue necessarily, but LeBron and Ty Lue getting this team back to a finals, given what this team has gone through over the season, would be sort of unbelievable.
LeBron and Ty Lue?
Well, because if
or
Ty
just
Lue can
LeBron?
if Ty Lue can figure out what the rotation should be to bring Kevin Love back for the playoffs, and if he can figure out who he can trust in the playoffs, and the strange thing is that we haven't had. I think there's been like 1 or 2 good Hood games, but George Hill has been scoring like he's had like 9 points.
Last night I saw some stuff from Hood.
From Hood,
yeah.
What did you see?
Not like great stuff, but it was just like a nice ability to like pull up inside the lane, hit a jumper. It's just, I mean, in Utah, it was like, okay, either played too infrequently or they decided like we got to bring him off the bench like to really see anything. But I understand why people are so high on his potential. I'm not personally, but like, yeah, he could definitely help.
Yeah, that's kind of the book on Hood, right? It's just like he shows flashes, but he can never put it together for an entire season.
So we're talking about LeBron possibly being an MVP, like whether or not LeBron is in the conversation for him. He's obviously always in the conversation, but is it too late for him to make a push? One person who never really, I think, got the due, possibly because they share backcourt duties with Kyle Lowry, is DeMar DeRozan as an MVP candidate this year. He does one specific thing that is not highly valued, except for people like me who don't like 3-pointers and enjoy a shivering forearm to the lane. I love mid-range jumpers from classic shooting guards. That's my new bit. The Raptors are obviously very real. They are the first team to clinch a playoff position. They beat the Pistons in overtime last night, 121-119. DeRozan had 42, including what should have been the greatest game-winning shot of all time, a coast-to-coast. Haley didn't see this, so I'm going to describe it as if it's on the radio.
I did. Just
Newsflash: DeMar DeRozan goes coast to coast with a 200 gem. But the Pistons took it to overtime. This is kind of sad because like it was sort of Blake's season in a nutshell. Blake played like really well last night and had like he had 2 game-tying shots to keep the game going, and it didn't matter. Fred VanVleet came through with that corner 3. Speaking of peers and proteges, it's been really nice watching Lowry and DeRozan kind of become the elder statesmen on this on this Raptors team and like bringing along some of these younger players. Just really exciting team. The vibes are good. Also, low-key home game for them in Detroit.
Right.
A lot of Toronto fans. I was like, damn, they really filled up this Detroit gym. Way to go. And I was like, oh, these guys are all cheering for the Raptors.
That new arena has some problems, man. They traded for Blake, it seems like, in large part because of that. They needed to fill that arena. There's nobody ever there. I said to someone last night, like, I bet you they had all the people from the higher bowl just sit in those premium seats just so they didn't get embarrassed.
There's nothing
TV.
Worse than when Phoenix is on national television and there's like 11 people in the lower bowl.
I know.
And it sounds like there are people in the gym, but it's just like nobody's in the lower bowl. Where is the Pistons facility located now? Because it was in Auburn Hills, but where is it now?
Their arena is downtown.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So,
but all the people who actually like went to Pistons games live in the suburbs.
I think they have had trouble recently drawing, but I think their idea was we put it downtown. We can kind of get everybody involved, and they have a nice new arena, and we could sell that to people, but. Really hasn't done much in that market.
Even during Blake's debut, I remember being like,
it was tough.
Yeah.
To be fair, it was a little surprising. People might have had plans on a Wednesday night in Detroit. They didn't know.
Didn't he come and then they had two days?
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying. In Detroit, you get to plan a week or two out.
It's very, very Pelicans-esque, where it's like they try to rush the process a little bit.
Yeah.
And they just made a big trade, hoping that they can make an impact right away. But you look at the Pelicans crowd; they're still trying to like kind of adapt to basketball and that team.
The Raptors are 47-17, and they are. Are they 3 games? Are they just a couple of inches behind the Rockets and the Warriors, or are they still in a different world?
I think it's hard to compare the two.
Is it?
Yes.
They play all the same. I understand what you're saying, but I want to know why we can't conceive of them being in that group.
I think actually part of it is the excuse me. I think actually part of it is that what we see the Rockets doing, yes, that like both Chris Paul and James Harden have had trouble in the postseason apart from each other, but I think that seeing them play together so well along with Clint Capella has kind of like erased that stigma in my mind, whereas for the Raptors it's still very real. And that's actually like something that I'm hoping goes away for both of them because they have played so well.
Yeah,
this
better
season.
Defense than both the Rockets and the Warriors.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah. It really just comes back to we've seen some stuff. Not to really like evoke Game of Thrones on you now when you're in your off season, but like
it's a classic Game of Thrones line. We've seen some stuff.
I was gonna get there.
Tyrion.
I was setting up. We were looking to their eyes, Chris. I was building
right
dramatic
after the
tension.
Red
I'm sorry,
wedding.
Jon Snow. I've seen some stuff. Seriously, I've seen some stuff.
I've got a glimpse into the next season's script.
Okay.
But no, they have a great point differential, but it looks like their team overall is just built for regular season success. When we look at the Warriors and the Rockets specifically, and even the Cavs, and we say, hey, they have the top-tier stars, and we know that's what matters in the playoffs. Like, we spend so long in the regular season. It's like, 6 months, let's say? And it's just kind of a different game in the postseason. And I'm at the point now where it's like, that's why I'm probably so down on the Raptors. Is I know that it's going to be different enough to where like they have to prove that in that setting.
Why do you say that? You think that they're too dependent on their bench?
Yeah, there's a lot of that, and I don't think their superstars are as good as other superstars. Not to be like super reductive, but to a certain extent, like the NBA does come down to your best players.
Yeah, and then especially in a 7-game series, you'll see that kind of thing. The margins is playoff Lowry here, or is it regular season Lowry?
I think I would almost argue it's more DeMar. I think we need to see like DeMar
I just
do
feel
that.
like I've seen something different from him. Not only the killer instinct to do something like he did last night, which I think he used to be like this volume mid-range scorer who would dominate the ball, and now I just feel like he has taken. I actually do think he's taken the leap. I do think that seeing something like that last night of him going coast to coast and yamming on Tolliver is, it's like a fun moment and it's a fun video, but it's also like, oh, like you're not going to let them lose. Like if you feel like you need to get down the court in 4.5 seconds and jam it like to win this game, like you're going to do that. And I'm really impressed with them. All the numbers, I mean, they're just doing the only thing you can ask them to do, which is dominating their conference. They have a top 10 offense and defense, right?
Yep.
And they're playing at the same level that the Rockets and Warriors are. They're just not getting any of the respect. I completely understand the prove it to me in the spring idea. I feel the same way about the Rockets, frankly. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that was just me getting another
There's also
dig in.
Okay, you guys are playing against East competition most of the time, which is...
I got to be honest, That doesn't bother me as much this year.
Me either.
I feel like there's some crappy Western Conference teams, or there's some teams in the Western Conference who can be crappy on any given night.
I'm trying to be crappy.
Yeah. Like you got to see Embiid, you got to see Giannis, you got to see whatever Wizards team you happen to see that night, and the Pacers are no pushovers. Like I don't feel like the East is as like much of a doormat conference as it is last year, and I think that there are some teams in the Western Conference where I'm like, any given night you guys could suck.
Right. I think one of the interesting questions is like, what do we want from the finals? Like, who do we want as just from a fan's perspective to represent the East? Is it better for a team like the Raptors, who's new and fresh and like has something to prove, against someone like the Rockets or the Warriors, or do we want to see another?
And if it's
finals?
Raptors Houston, does LA get to claim it because of like DeMar going to USC, Paul playing for the Clippers, Harden coming from California? Is that like an LA finals all of a sudden?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Raptors would be fun.
Yeah, I think. In a weird way, that's what I really want for the NBA Finals this year is something new.
Well,
just like the consequences and the meaning of that Finals would be so huge to have the Raptors playing the Rockets and to have it not be a LeBron and Curry Durant Finals. I'm fairly certain. I think the Raptors are going to go. But
last season there was even kind of like a post-depression after the Warriors won, even though like they won and we were like, God, they're so good. It was like, oh God, they're so good.
Yeah.
And they're gonna be there for the next 4 seasons until somebody decides they want more money.
Right.
And so that was kind of like, oh, it's not gonna be as interesting next season because we know who's gonna win. So seeing the Rockets there would be huge.
Yeah, I would love to see the Rockets there, or excuse me, the Raptors, just because of like it's a new thing and that'd be fun. I like new experiences.
Also, you know that Toronto, like the arena, the city would be like at a fever pitch. It would be so awesome to see that happen to that city.
A lot of bargains and coupons at Tim Hortons that people could take advantage of.
Maple logs.
But
in the house.
At the same time, I look back at some of the finals and like when one elite team wins a finals and doesn't face the other elite team from the other conference, we're always like, oh, they avoided that team. And it's kind of a knock on their title.
Asterisks.
Yeah, and so I don't like that. So, I mean, if it was Rockets Cavs, just to see that sort of dynamic play out with the Rockets taking over the Warriors and kind of entering a new era, that'd be nice.
Guys, we're back. Haley, Justin, Chris, group chat. We'll be joined in a little bit by Jason Concepcion to talk about James Harden and Russell Westbrook. But right now, I want to talk about a bunch of these teams that are kind of grouped together in their respective conferences between 3 and 9. And in the East, I think that the Bucks are going to have to like lose every game to not make the playoffs with the 8th seed, which makes them kind of a terrifying 8th seed.
Oh, yeah.
That is, and we can talk about that if we want. But I wanted to touch on a couple of these teams that are in that 3, 4, 5 range that you can't quit. There's something about them that you're just kind of they're engaging and interesting on a nightly basis. Haley, you just got done writing about the Nuggets. I think that'll probably be up by the time people hear this pod. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
But why don't you tell me a little bit about what you were curious about the Nuggets and what makes them so interesting to you?
So I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. Even though Danny Chow pointed out to me that the rest of their schedule is relatively easy, they should have, opportunities to get there. I think that they're kind of I think that there's conflicting ideals going on there. Especially since Millsap's come back, because we've seen how Jokic typically thrives, right? And that's kind of playing fast, up-tempo. He likes to freestyle and uses high basketball IQ to, create these amazing assists. He's really active in cutting and really good at it. He likes to back people down. Obviously, that doesn't translate to great defense, which I think has crushed Malone a lot. All last season, he had to run with this. He inherited a team that was built to be fast-paced. And so I think that, last season when he was like, okay, I got Millsap, I got Plumlee, this is great. Like, we can finally kind of adjust and do both. I also think that he thought it would create more of like the half-court sets.
Yes.
That's what he likes. It's no secret. And so I think that in January, when Plumlee was out, Millsap was still out, he said, I'm going to let them have the reins a little bit more. I'm not going to call as many plays. That's when they went on the 7-2 run, right? And then he's started calling more plays again with Millsap, and he actually said I'm running these to play to Millsap's strengths. He wants him to, post up. The ball's not running through Jokic as much. The thing is, it's like, I think that Jokic was trying in the beginning. They've played 5 games together since Millsap came back. I think he was definitely trying in the beginning, and it's frustrating. And I mean, he's down to like really weird like attempted shots, except for last night against Cleveland when he scored 32.
Paul?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that he became like really unhappy and distant. And
Paul Millsap did, or Mike Malone did?
No, Jokic.
Oh.
And that's why he was he took like 5 shot attempts one game. He took 9 another game. So I think it's really frustrating for him. And if you watch him, it's mostly like he gets the ball, he passes it away.
Yeah. I think they kind of embraced the up-tempo, we're going to outscore you identity right before Millsap came back. And it seemed like they had a modicum of success that way. It seems like you were saying, it played into what Jokic was doing. And now they just seem kind of at odds with each other.
It certainly plays into what young players are capable of. It's
right.
like, like Gary Harris and Jamal Murray and Jokic are probably happy to see, not disparaging them personally, but are probably happy to see inflated scoring numbers, right? Like both for contract purposes and just for self identity purposes. And young teams typically, I mean, Ryan Russell was just talking about this the other day about the Sixers, but like young teams just don't know how to play defense. Yeah. The bad defensive teams in this league tend to be younger. They tend to be the teams like the Kings. They tend to be teams like the Magic. Even no matter who's coaching them, whether it's Jaeger or Vogel,
look at
or
the
Mike
Wolves
Malone.
and Tibbs last year.
Yeah, exactly. Like these guys, it takes a while to learn NBA defensive concepts to understand some of the more complicated ideas about help and weak side stuff and everything else. And you can have Sam Van Gundy screaming "form a ball" all you want, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to do it. And you're right. Now they've got this more of a rigid half court situation going. Jokic might be the first unicorn that I think needs another unicorn. With all these other guys, and we're going to talk about the Pelicans in a second, you're like, this is going to happen. Like, this will, if he stays healthy and they get the right pieces around him, this will happen. This guy will be like an all-NBA player. Jokic is the one who I'm like, you're really cool, but I don't know whether you can be the best player on a team.
Sure.
Well, part of it is he's only playing half of the court.
Yeah.
Like all these other unicorns, they have the ability to be defensive stoppers. They're kind of potentially anchors for those defense. Towns, AD, Giannis.
You said potential, right?
Yes, potentially.
Right.
Yeah.
I was like,
not Towns, but the other two for sure are definitely up there. But with Jokic,
he's deadlifting somewhere. Yeah.
Jokic might be always the worst defender on your team,
yeah.
and you really have to overcome that, which is why Millsap raises their ceiling. But now they're kind of adjusting to that, where they had something that worked versus something that could work better but isn't right now.
Yeah, Jokic could be like upgraded Kevin Love. Like he's got passing instincts that are essentially like unparalleled to me. I mean, even Sabonis wasn't even this good as a passer, I don't think, in terms of like just his court vision.
Mm-hmm.
Are you
right?
Which Sabonis?
Arvidas, Devadas. I have not spent that much time with the tape, but yeah, I think that he needs something else going on. And yeah,
his defense is also just like, who knows what it would be if he was really committed. But he is so not committed. He stands in the middle. He'll like walk over. It's like his arms go up after somebody already passed it. It's just like so rough to watch. And I'm sure for Malone, it's like very frustrating.
Yeah, you think because he's big, he's going to be a rim protector, but he's really like slow laterally. I don't know if he has much of a vertical leap.
Yeah.
I don't know if he has great instincts on that end. So you're really going to have to overcome that. And if like you're built around a Jokic, Jamal Murray team.
Gary Harris team.
Yeah, but Murray specifically, not that great of a defender.
This is the interesting question too, is like you watch the Raptors over the last 5 years, they've obviously taken a huge leap forward this season by sticking with a certain core and tinkering around. I mean, even Valanciunas is part of that core that they've had in place for a long time. If you're the Nuggets, do you have the patience, and is this team exciting enough, and is Mike Malone a good enough coach where you're like, I think we can just grow with Jokic, Harris, and Murray, and we'll have a Millsap type figure who are bringing in a good veteran every year, and maybe finally they can get some bench turnover where they've had guys like Fareed and Chandler on that team for years and not done anything with them, when I think they've probably all gone past their sell-by date. Mm-hmm. It's just an interesting experiment. Another team that is is pretty experimental at this point is the red hot New Orleans Pelicans.
Hey now,
Justin's wearing a King Baby Cake t-shirt, but I'm the big bird. I went and saw the Pelicans play the Clippers live this week, and not to be smokes weed once guy, but holy shit, Anthony Davis.
Yeah, pretty good.
I'd never seen him live.
Oh.
And I was fucking impressed.
Yeah, I feel like such like the wet blanket in the Slack chats, because I was like, oh yeah, I've seen this already.
I know. I mean, you were on the beat for a while with that. Some of his first 2 seasons.
The past 2 seasons.
The past 2 seasons.
Yeah.
So I didn't know that he was probably the best shooting guard on the floor against the Clippers.
Yeah.
On the entire court, he was. And the thing that's really cool about him is it's not like somebody let the big guy dribble. Like, he got like low to the ground and was like actually like looking at angles and his stroke. I think he could probably just take 10 threes a game and make half of them, maybe.
Yeah, he's not as comfortable with it as like you'd expect, but his shot is perfect for it.
Nice shot. And you're just kind of like, well, nobody could ever get a hand up. No. So like, why not maybe just do that all game?
Yeah.
This is now this wildly funky team. Bill tweeted something today that suggested there was a Ewing theory involved with Cousins, I think. They've basically not, I don't think they've lost since Boogie went out, have they?
I think they've lost, but they haven't lost since the break.
Yeah, they're 12-5 since Boogie went down. So
I don't
yeah, that's right.
I don't think it's 100% Ewing theory though. I think it's that Anthony Davis is like, you know what? I'm fucking doing this.
They're just going to him more.
It's that, and it's maybe this is the offense Gentry always should have been running.
This is my favorite take.
You do it. It's your take.
No.
I feel like I feel like it's like I've showed up and it's like you've been watching a band for 20 years, and I'm like, this band is awesome. Here's what they do.
You can still appreciate the solos.
Okay, just go ahead.
All right, no, I think for the longest time, they had to make the DeMarcus Cousins trade. It made too much sense. It also saved a lot of their jobs potentially.
Yeah.
It raises their ceiling to another level because in today's NBA, there's just no one that can combat the AD Boogie sort of dynamic. I still think that AD is at his best as a stretch 5 in today's NBA, especially if you look at him. I was watching that Clippers game from afar. He's big, man.
He is very big.
He's almost as big as DeAndre Jordan these days, and like there were centers like Harrell just bouncing off that dude.
Yeah.
But if you do not make the Cousins trade, let's say, and you commit to Alvin Gentry's system and his vision for AD1 and for the team in general, now you're looking at, let's say they just tanked and they got another draft pick. You're looking at, let's say, Lonzo Ball. You're looking at Drew Holiday, a wing, Anthony Davis, and Mirotic. And you still have Buddy, and you still have Tariq Evans. Well, you have to bring him back probably on the same minimum contract that he's on now. He could run that second unit. I even tweeted about this, that game. I think if they had a guy like him in that game, he makes perfect sense for that second unit.
They had such a wild, like there were some wild lineups out there. It was like Diallo, Mirotic, Rondo. I was like, this is like the Village of the Damned. I can't believe what I'm watching. And when they stuck around when AD wasn't on the court, and when AD was on the court, they just blew the doors off. That being said, there was definitely a moment where I like, oh no, he just tore his abductor muscle. And that was during the Clippers game. And then last night, he went down really hard on his ankle against the Kings. X-rays were negative. If it's a high ankle sprain, I think they are like 99% to make the playoffs according to 538 or something like that. I mean, like they're high
up there.
It's high up there, so I guess they could almost, I don't think they could lose out, but they could suffer for a couple of weeks. I think that the Davis thing is always going to be, can he stay on the floor? You know, and even when he has a season like he's having now, you're just always afraid. And what's wild is that like I feel like he actually could do more. I was watching him like against the Clippers, and I was like, he could block any shot he could get to, and he just like would watch a guy come off of like a screen on the elbow, and you could see him sort of tracking him like a panther. Like he was like, I got you. Like you're just not going to score. Harrell, I mean, like, and Harrell had like a career night, and it was still like Anthony Davis could do anything he wanted against him.
What team could he do more in your opinion?
If he goes to Boston, I will quit participating in the NBA conversation. I will not watch any more NBA games, because that would be, for me personally as a Philadelphian, it would suck. Mm-hmm. It would also be like a direct move against Embiid. Mm-hmm. And although Embiid, AD for the next 5 years, if either of those guys could stay healthy, that would be like going back to like true center basketball that I really love. You know,
yeah. I would love to see AD.
I love 7-footers banging down low.
I was gonna let that one go. I mean, as a basketball fan, I can't wait until AD plays with like just 4 other amazing teammates.
Yes.
Just he's gonna go to another level, and like we're already talking about this guy as a Hall of Famer based on his production thus far.
Yeah.
Like you project him out, he's just on the same line as like Shaq and some of these other guys. It's insane. But get him with like Kyrie Irving and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and holy shit, this dude is gonna be amazing.
Speaking of the Sixers, why don't you tell me a little bit about why you can't quit the Sixers?
I just think they have what a lot of the other teams that we're talking about in this middle tier don't. They just have an identity, one, and they have the type of elite talent, young talent that's still kind of growing into themselves and playing around each other's, and it's really starting to come to fruition. We're starting to see, like, we put something in Slacks the other day. I forgot who tweeted it out, but a lot of the projection systems, advanced metrics, are projecting the Sixers as the 3 seed in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, also some Markelle Fultz was dunking before the game the other day, so they've got that to look forward to. Yeah,
all right, one step at a time.
But this has been, they did a subtle rejiggering of their team. Their second unit was an adventure every night, you know, and it was there was times where you'd be watching and you're like, wow, Trevor Booker's getting a lot of time out here, you know, and I think that adding Ilyasova and Bellinelli, that's not the kind of thing that makes new fans, but it's the kind of thing that wins more games probably.
Yeah, sure. And I think they have, on the good side, they have someone like Embiid, and like, who is guarding him in the playoffs? Do the Raptors have a guy to counter him? Do the Celtics and the Cavs have anyone who can counter him at his peak and healthy? On the other hand, Kevin O'Connor wrote the other day, which is a good piece, just comparing Ben Simmons and Brandon Ingram.
Yeah.
And there's still questions about Ben Simmons in the half court in the fourth quarter, simply because if he can't shoot, the whole team becomes way more predictable, and you wonder what's going to happen in a playoff setting. So they're very intriguing just for that reason.
Ben Simmons right now is like Rondo if Rondo dunked it every time he got to the hoop.
Big Rondo? Is that
Big Rondo?
It's that same thing where you're like, you have a wide open shot, you have a wide open shot, you have a wide open shot. And then Rondo goes under the hoop and does like a crazy pass to like skip pass to the other side of the court. Ben Simmons just dunks it. And so that will be interesting to see what happens if teams actually start shutting off those lanes or contesting his shots a little bit more at the rim. I also just think his court vision is so unbelievable that it changes the geometry of the court. What do you think about how the Sixers have been playing?
Well, I think I just can't quit on them. I can't quit watching them because I don't feel any need for them to get the 3 seed or to get, to get out of the first round or anything this season. I'm like watching these guys who are going to be amazing in a couple years next year. They're already amazing, and I really watch the Sixers like these two are the future. And it's very exciting because I'm like, they're both going to be there next year too.
Yeah.
Chris, where are you at it? Like, do you want them to get the 3, and like, is it important to you at all?
I would love that for them to not have to get the LeBron steamroller treatment in the first round. So right now that they're the 6 and the Cavs are the 3, I think it would be an incredible achievement for them to get the 3rd seed in the Eastern Conference, for sure. So
just so they could sell to LeBron, like, you're the missing piece.
Yeah, or it's just so that you caught me. I think it would be exciting to see them compete against a Wizards or a Pacers in the first round. I think that would be a winnable series for them for sure. We're back. It's group chat, and now we have a bigger group because Jason Concepcion's here. What's up?
Yes.
Applaud that man.
Hi.
Applaud him because he wrote a banger column this week.
I appreciate that.
Jason wrote about Russ-vs Harden, which is an argument that has torn the ringer apart for so long. Now I feel like there's nobody else on my team, except for like maybe Gallagher, about just like where I still defend Russ.
I'm here.
Okay, thank you. You're not very vocal about it.
I know.
I take a lot of slings and arrows in Slack channels. What's the argument? Let's distill it down.
Because I need Sean Fantasy to like me, just to be clear.
Well, all right,
You really don't.
Yeah, you don't.
I got you. Don't worry about it.
I think defining the argument is important, I think, because to me my position is debate is not a debate anymore. Harden is better than Russ, right? I think even Russ fans are like, yes, I agree with that. In the sense that if you define better as easier to build a team around, has a game more predicated to the way the league is trending, right? And makes guys better in a fashion that is commensurate with winning.
The third one is the most important.
If you want to win basketball games, James Harden is your guy.
Yeah, that's what I'm. But now,
how about if you want to feel good about watching basketball?
Yes,
though?
that's now
You're
that's
all about the experience.
That's another thing. If you define it as that, that's fine. Like, I have no. I love Russ. I love watching Russ. Do I think that he's the guy that you go to the championship with? Maybe. I think it's harder to assemble that team than it is around James Harden.
I don't think there's anything romantic about watching Russ fail. That's not what this is about. Right. And I actually think that up until Kevin Durant left, that wasn't really a consideration.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he didn't fail very often. He went to a conference, he went to an NBA finals, they went to the conference finals. They were basically a Klay Thompson hot streak away from beating one of the great all-time NBA teams in the conference finals. I adored their the Kev and Russ friction because I thought it was so nakedly psychological. When you watched it, you were just like, oh, who's gonna these two great players who obviously like each other but are obviously bad for each other, what's gonna happen here? And well, it's not like Kevin Durant wasn't bad for Russell Westbrook. I think Russell Westbrook was it didn't make Kevin as efficient as he could be.
Yeah, and you look at the talent they assembled. They have 3 MVP candidates, 3 guys that will probably ultimately win MVPs on that team, and Serge Ibaka and Thabo Sefolosha, but whatever.
Yeah, and Nick Collison.
But the fact that they only went to 1 finals is disappointing, especially when you look at what Kevin Durant has done outside of Russ and what other guys are doing outside of Russ now. Jason brought it up in his piece. Look at Oladipo, look at Enes Kanter, just eating in New York. There's something to be said about that.
Yeah. Oladipo's personal style really requires him to have the ball a lot more than he ever would with Russ.
Yeah,
a lot more than he ever would with a couple other point guards too.
Well, that was the hope with Paul George. I don't know if we can necessarily put an asterisk on this season just because Roberson ruptured his patella. You know, I mean, I think that they were on a hot streak there.
Yes, they were the elite defensive team.
They were and they had a certain big game attitude that was very terrifying, I think, for some of the bigger teams. I think that defensive intensity that you're talking about, and they would lose to the Wolves, they would lose to the Kings here and there, but they beat the Warriors a couple times they played them.
Having said that, we always used to talk about this during the Thunder debate of late 2017. Their identity was on defense.
Yeah.
And Russ didn't contribute to that. He was actually the worst defender on the floor for them a lot of the times. It's very Derrick Rose-esque, where it's now that we value both sides of the court equally, or at least close to that, you have to factor in that he's not a big part of the best part of that.
For me, it's about margins. No one's saying Russ is bad, which I think is what people who are critical of the pro Harden stance would say, especially on Twitter, where people are normal. It's if the way Russ plays will win you games. Will they win you all the games you need to win? Not all the time. It's it comes down to at times that final shot, passing to KD when he, instead of passing to KD, he takes a pull-up 3. Early in the clock. Those decisions lose you playoff games in the long run.
What was the stat that you screenshotted, or that you had a tweet in there? It was a screenshot. It was something like when Russ shoots over 17 field goal attempts, they're sub 500 team, and when he shoots less, they're 12-1 or something. And that's sort of this is the problem, is that I don't think anybody, even somebody like Sean, who doesn't who really laid out his argument last year and against Russ, this post that he wrote for the site. That it's more about what he does to the players around him.
Yeah, that's the thing.
And that he's sort of doomed to be this great player on a 500 team rather than the leader of a team that's going to the finals, right?
Yeah, I also thought what you said was interesting, and I think that it's a product of last season and a little bit the season before. They're just all of a sudden extremely pitted against each other. And so much so that you can't just admit that both of them are good. It's no, this one's superior, and you have to make that choice because of how much, especially last year, Russ won the MVP. A lot of people thought Harden, but even before that, during the season, it's you can't just say no, Russ is still very good at basketball. You have to say Russ is not as good as Harden.
They're interlinked in a way that Curry and Russ aren't, because they were all on the same team, and it's hard to escape the seemingly it's seemingly more obvious every day that Presti had 3 MVP level players and kept the worst one.
Yeah.
Worst.
Okay,
he's still very good. But
here's the counter to that.
Yeah.
Is there anything that is there a way in which maybe the Thunder never evolved past the obvious athleticism that team is constructed around, and that Harden and Durant have both gone to teams that have seemingly unlocked a next level of basketball? I mean, they play. One plays for Mike D'Antoni, one plays for Steve Kerr, both of whom share a lot of the same offensive philosophies. They have general managers who are seeing things in a different way. Presti's really good with what he has, but there is a degree to which he's almost like Billy Beane. Like he can't really attract a free agent to Oklahoma City. And I don't even know if he has in the past, because I mean, there was that whole thing when Durant, one of the reasons why Durant was also like, I kind of have to leave Oklahoma is because like, what was it? Pau Gasol wouldn't even consider coming to Oklahoma. And it's like, that was Pau Gasol.
He wanted to go to the theaters in Chicago.
Yeah. He was like, I'd rather go lose in Chicago and live in Chicago than win in Oklahoma.
I mean, same.
Well, is it?
Yeah.
Oklahoma
Chicago
and Chicago?
Oklahoma.
Wow.
I mean, I'm sorry. Like,
Powell also has chips, so it's like, you know.
Yeah, he's
got a ring, so he's like, yeah.
Right.
Hilly O'Shaughnessy, friend of the Midwesterners.
Well.
Yeah.
Just tearing them down.
Well, it's not necessarily tearing them down. It's just like Chicago is very appealing. Not that Oklahoma doesn't have
I thought you were like Oklahoma
things.
City is as nice as Chicago.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were going for.
Oh, no.
No. I mean, I think you make a good point about just the environment and the fact that they've almost gravitated coaching-wise toward task managers and like the type of college coach, like the Nick Saban of NBA coaches. On the other hand, what coach in the world is telling Russ to play differently? If you have Russ and your team is built around him, who's saying like, no, ISO ball isn't the way to do it?
Who has the juice to do that?
Yeah, you need
Like,
to pass it
not
to
a
Thabo
college
Sefolosha.
coach.
That's what I wonder, is if Russ plays for Pop, if Russ plays for Stevens, if Russ plays for Spoelstra, you know, we're not so far removed from when we used to imagine Russ on another team. I'm wondering what the sliding doors, like what it would have looked like if he had ever played in a different system. He is Oklahoma City now. It does kind of remind me of what happened with Iverson after the finals years, where it was like they just brought in a cavalcade of Larry Hughes type guys to pair with him, and it never worked out. And so you sort of wonder now. Back then, in the early 2000s, you were just kind of like, guys got signed to like 6-7 year contracts. Right. They never went anywhere. You know, for Oklahoma City, and we've talked about this a lot, and maybe it's a broken record at this point, but a lot of these smaller market teams are going to have to consider selling high on their stars to do these kinds of rebuilds. And one thing that we've seen from Presti is a certain amount of aggression and a certain amount of, you know, risk taking. And I wonder whether or not, if Paul George leaves and they're stuck with Carmelo, Steven Adams and Russ, and you can't really do a whole lot with that. Like, what do? You know, Russ has what, 2 more years after this on his deal before he can opt out?
Oh no, he just signed that big extension.
Massive extension of the 200.
But isn't there an opt out in it?
I'm not sure. I believe he's locked in for like 4 or 5 more years.
Okay, all right.
I mean, to me, I can't see Presti being the guy who moves him, because if you
it would have to be Westbrook. And I don't think Westbrook would ever leave. I don't think Westbrook would ever not say like, I can do it here.
I feel like because then the judgment on Presti is, I think, pretty dire once he ends up trading Westbrook. And now you're left with nothing. You had these 3 MVP guys, one of the most promising teams in the league. They went from like 30 wins to 50 wins like in a season. The trajectory was sky high, and then you are left with like nothing.
They're so influential. They're such an influential team. When you think about all the other teams around who are like, well, we could try and do what the Thunder did. We can get Giannis and 2 other guys who we can pair with him that we draft and we control and we can get on manageable contracts.
I mean, he hit 3 home runs and a triple in consecutive drafts.
Yeah,
you know,
it's amazing.
KD, Westbrook, Harden, Ibaka. It was just like boom, 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 boom.
And then Adams later on, who's very good.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
and then basketball changed too
Yes.
drastically for them to adjust.
Yeah. One of the interesting things I think about Harden in this year is that he's better. He's better than last year. He's like significantly better. He has a PER over 30, which is like
leading the league.
Michael Jordan-esque elite level. And I think it's interesting because he's no longer chasing triple doubles in the way that he was last year, clearly. But on the other hand, his usage rate is higher. So you could also say he's playing more like Russ, but like maybe his teammates are just a little bit better and he's getting more guys involved.
This fascinates me about basketball right now, because we've been told like for the last decade plus like ISO ball is bad. Now through analytics and just seeing different looks, having a better awareness of the way possessions are used, it's just all about context, right?
Yeah,
like
everything's relative.
If it works, if you can score efficiently in an ISO, then do it. And if you have the most efficient ISO scorer in the league, and surround them with shooters and just let them work.
Yeah.
It's really amazing how the perception of the league has changed in that way.
It's so many teams would love to play the way the Rockets do, where you have Ryan Anderson, Eric Gordon, Gerald Green, whoever you have standing out in those spots, and you just have one of the 2 elite ISO players in the league grinding up clock and then drawing all this sort of gravity towards them. And if you've got guys who can hit 35-footers, it's unbeatable.
And imagine, who would have thought that Harden's usage rate would have been higher with Chris Paul?
Yeah.
That's absurd.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense. And it makes me think, okay, none of us believe that Chris Paul said he wanted to like spot up and not have as many responsibilities, but he was being earnest.
Yeah, and it's honestly like it is another check in the Harden's category, because everybody thought there's only one ball. Harden breaks under pressure. What's he going to do the first time Chris Paul tells him not to go out on a Friday night or whatever? And honestly, it just obviously it clearly hasn't mattered. And Russ was dealt a pretty winning hand this year. Yeah. And they haven't been able to make it work. And I don't know whether it's because Billy Donovan's playbook isn't good enough, or I don't know whether or not there is a playbook, but Russ breaks it every time down.
Yeah.
Obviously, there is a game plan in which Russ doesn't take that many shots, and the Thunder are a better team, but he's not going to do that.
Danny Chow put something in Slack the other day, which I think is pretty fascinating. After AD's big performance against the Clippers, he said, where would this year's AD rank in last year's MVP race?
Yeah, well, and that was Tate's tweet from a couple of weeks ago, where he was like, but by any metric, Harden's the MVP. He is already the MVP this year. But if we're using the like emotional narrative conversation that we had last year with Russ, AD is the MVP.
Well, and my response was, AD is just doing what he did last year. It's just his teammates are a little bit better. Yeah. And then like my head exploded, because then you're getting into this slippery slope where it's like, well, how much does context matter? How much is this person's, like, we always say, like, oh, Russ won the MVP because he carried a team that didn't have enough guys around him. But then, like, why wouldn't AD be the same thing last year? It's just
but also emotionally, it's like, oh my God, Boogie went down, and now he's doing this.
And wins.
You know?
Yeah. It's an incredible debate. I think you can look at it just simply through the lens of like, what do you want your team to look like, and how do you want your team to play, or you can look at it through the lens of like, what do you care about when you watch basketball? And I have an emotional reaction. I have an aesthetic reaction when I see the Thunder play versus when I see the Rockets play. The Thunder can be grindingly unentertaining to watch and really frustrating, but there is something naked about the way that they play.
100% agree. There's a counterculture element to them of like, oh, this is how you're supposed to play with the spacing, the passing. Fuck that.
Yeah,
I'm gonna dunk on you.
I'm gonna
dunk on you.
Go
and
as hard
what?
as I can. Yeah.
Right, and then I'm gonna scream in your face.
Yeah.
Like,
and
then
it's dope.
what?
And
That's
it's dope.
great.
It is dope.
Now,
it is dope.
I react to that on an emotional level. It's kind of hard when you watch James Harden go to the line and go to the line and go to the line and go to the line again and goes to the line, and then he grinds
another
up,
wide open three for somebody else.
Grinds up 18 seconds of the clock like it's 1996. I mean, really looks like the 90s sometimes out there. And it's so based on, well, here's the most efficient ways to score, and I'm just going to lean on these things. And I don't care what it looks like. I don't care about anything else. That can leave you cold at times. At the same time, it's like, do we want to win or do you want to be entertained? It's like those things aren't mutually exclusive.
Well, we'll be having this conversation again because it's very possible that this could be a first-round playoff matchup, which would be pretty exciting. Until next time, for Haley, Justin, Jason Concepcion, thanks for joining us. I'm Chris Ryan. This has been Group Chat. Talk to you next week.